Another day begins at Sergio Vieira de Mello Public School in suburban Rio de Janeiro. The school was named after the UN diplomat as part of countless tributes to a man regarded as a national hero.
Sergio Vieira de Mello morreu no Iraque por causa que ele estava ajudando o mundo a ter paz.
As his memory lives on, so does the pain of the loved ones he left behind. Every day, his partner Carolina and his 86-year-old mother Gilda walk along his beloved Ipanema beach. He would come here for respite from the war-torn countries where he lived and worked. But his family's grief is now mixed with anger.
We never really wanted to go to Iraq, and we ended up finishing our lives there.
Insistiram em que ele foram para o Iraque, exigiram que ele fosse para o Iraque. A pessoa que havia acima dele mandou ocupar esse cargo. O que ele não mandou foi segurança.
Specifically with the unexploded ordnance. And in our landmine impact survey in the north, we found that 80...
The explosion that tore apart the UN headquarters in Baghdad was the first ever terrorist attack on a UN mission. It was almost completely unprepared for it.
I was sitting at my desk when the bomb went off. When I looked out, I heard someone shouting, "Sergio is here, he's alive." I headed there, and the soldiers tried to stop me. But I was determined to get through. I was going to get through by persuasion or by force. But I wanted Sergio to know how much I loved him, and that I was going to get him out. I swore to him that I was going to get him out.
22 UN staff perished on that terrible day, including the mission leader, Sergio Vieira de Mello. Part of the UN's future died with him. At 55, he was being groomed to be the next UN Secretary General. His family is still struggling to understand how it could have happened.
Mas não faleceu, como diz o atestado de óbito que mandaram logo depois. Ele ficou ainda 3 horas vivo, não teve um socorro, um auxílio, ninguém fosse perto dele, tentar tirá-lo, nada. Foram todos omissos. Ele viveu ainda 3 horas.
And because the death certificate was wrong, they are trapped in a legal nightmare. Amazingly, under Brazilian law, Sergio Vieira de Mello is still presumed to be alive. In an agonizing thought for the family, his body may have to be exhumed for autopsy for his affairs to be laid to rest.
Só quem já passou pelo que eu passei pode me compreender.
bombing cut short an extraordinary life. The son of a Brazilian diplomat, he grew up in different countries and cultures, becoming fluent in 7 languages. He dreamed of a world without poverty or war and believed only a strong international body could achieve it. At 21, while completing a doctorate in philosophy in Paris, he joined the UN. And for the next 33 years he worked in conflict zones, from Congo and Rwanda to Lebanon, Palestine, Bosnia and Kosovo. In 1999 he was named UN Administrator of East Timor to steer the shattered nation to independence.
I wish to appeal to you to lay down your weapons and to surrender.
East Timor was a turning point in his life. Legally separated from his first wife for over a decade, he started a new life with an Argentine UN worker, Carolina Larriera.
Timor was very special for us because that environment made it possible for us to get together. The Timorese loved Sergio, and I think he was able to develop that attachment with them.
The transition to independence was seen as the UN's most successful mission ever. Vieira de Mello was now being spoken of as a likely successor to his boss Kofi Annan. But it had taken a personal toll.
Well, after East Timor, Sergio was exhausted. It had been 3 very intense years. We were thinking about settling down. We wanted to have a child.
After Timor, he won a post that could have seen him pursue his ideals and lead a settled life. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. But another conflict soon beckoned. Iraq. Like the organization he represented, Sergio Vieira de Mello opposed the US invasion and had little interest in being caught up in it.
Ele ainda comparou, imagina se de repente no Rio, que é a cidade natal dele, se os tanques estão andando lá pela praia de Copacabana, pela cidade, tanques de países que vieram nos invadir.
Salem Loam was his communications officer in Baghdad at the time of the bombing.
Well, Sergio was not one of those who automatically ruled out the use of force in order to protect the people of Iraq. He knew war would be terrible, but he also knew that under Saddam Hussein, the situation of human rights in Iraq was terrible. But of course, if there was going to be use of force, he very much wanted it to be through the United Nations.
I don't think he needs an introduction.
At Kofi Annan's insistence, he decided to make the most of it, believing his mission might succeed if the US quickly transferred power to the Iraqi people.
A consensus builder.
The Iraqi society is rich, and that richness has been suppressed brutally for the last 24 years.
But his optimism was short-lived.
I remember him saying, Carolina, I knew this place was going to be tough, but I never imagined that it was going to be so hard.
It appears their goal is to simply make it too painful.
He began to fear the UN mission was simply legitimizing the occupation, led by the US pro-consul Paul Bremer.
He was frustrated because Bremer was not really receiving him any longer. He was voicing his concerns to UN headquarters in New York, and he was not having enough feedback either.
Sergio was the UN and the world's preeminent negotiator. He was the preeminent person who could handle situations of intense post-conflict instability. But in Iraq, he had no authority whatsoever. All he could do was liaise with the Americans. They were in complete control.
As the insurgency intensified, staff became worried they were vulnerable to attack.
We no longer wanted to be there. The evening before the attack, we were making the bookings for a trip in October to Brazil. Little did we know then that the following day was going to be the end.
3 days after the bombing, his remains were flown to Rio de Janeiro for a memorial service. But the actions taken since his death have only intensified the anguish of his family in Brazil. The next day, without consulting Gilda or Carolina, his body was flown to Geneva, where he was buried in the Heroes Cemetery.
O fato de levarem o corpo de meu filho para longe de mim foi uma das maiores crueldades que eu já vi na minha vida.
There were a lot of consultations between the family, both sides of Sergio's family, and the decision was finally made by his widow that they would like his body to be buried in Geneva.
Se eu não sou família dele, ninguém mais é. Porque quem botou ele no mundo fui eu. Eu não ouvi isso, porque eu não gostaria que meu filho fosse... E ele não, eu falo isso porque ele não gostaria de ser enterrado fora do Rio de Janeiro.
Their shock increased when they were faxed a death certificate identifying him as an Iraqi citizen and stating he had died within minutes. A revised certificate sent after they complained to the UN was still riddled with errors, and there had been no autopsy. That made it invalid under Brazilian law.
Eu estava dizendo que às 7 horas vêm outras pessoas aqui.
It meant Gilda was unable to settle his estate, including the apartment she lives in, which is registered in his name.
Mas inutilmente, ninguém aceita aqui, eu não posso me impor aqui diante da justiça e dizer eu quero fazer isso ou aquilo, quero botar a situação do meu filho aqui em ordem. Agora você pode dar
Two long-term friends of the Vieira de Mello family are now taking up the cause, lawyer Sergio Vieira and Dr. Edneda Freitas. They believe the UN's failure to provide a proper death certificate leaves the family only one option.
Agora só fazendo a exumação do corpo, a exumação do cadáver e fazendo a perícia médico-legal para saber, inclusive, como é que ele foi assassinado.
Lawyer Sergio Vieira is now considering taking the UN to its own international court.
O que seria uma atitude inédita, porque não há na história do direito internacional uma medida precedente de igual tamanho, de igual porte.
But the UN insists the fault lies with the US Army of Occupation.
We have asked and been engaged since then, since last year, in an effort to persuade the Americans to provide a more detailed death certificate. But as I said, it was not a United Nations death certificate. We were not running the country.
What is not in dispute is that the UN security precautions were grossly inadequate.
Mistakes were made. Yes, mistakes were made. I wasn't there on the 19th. I had left a couple of weeks earlier. But as I said, we have to learn from these mistakes.
The bombing of the compound forced the UN to stop all humanitarian work in Iraq.
And we were a great team.
And it continues to haunt its most senior officials who lost close friends and colleagues.
Put together a team like that. Every morning I walk into my office and I say good morning to Sergio and Nadia. You can see their pictures behind me. And they accompany us in our journey.
For Sergio Vieira de Mello's family, the pride in his sacrifice is embittered by the senselessness of his death, and a conviction they have all been let down by the organization for which he gave his life.
I think Sergio would say, please, that my death and that of my colleagues be not in vain. Let's learn from this attack. And please don't forget those who survived. and those whose lives were destroyed forever by the tragedy.
And that's our program for tonight. Hello, I'm Evan Williams. A decade after the Balkans conflicts, we've come back to find out why thousands of war criminals are still walking free and why many survivors feel they're being denied justice.
We have a lot of people who are suspects, who are perpetrators, who are the executors of crimes that we can not touch.
Justice denied. That's Foreign Correspondent next Tuesday night at 9:20, right after the bill.
Boa noite. Sarajevo, a capital do medo, uma chaga na consciência do mundo. Uma guerra em que civis são massacrados e há pouca esperança de paz. O repórter Pedro Bial e o cinegrafista Sergio Vieira vão às trincheiras desta guerra suja, a guerra que tem o recorde de jornalistas mortos.
Foi perto, né? Você diria a quantos metros da gente?
Olha, isso aconteceu aqui, não tem... Essa explosão foi mais ou menos uns 20 metros aqui da nossa posição.
Atiradores continuam matando civis e aterrorizando a população. Uma frágil trégua é desrespeitada a cada momento. Por isso, a visita do Papa na semana passada teve que ser cancelada. Em meio aos tiros, militares brasileiros ajudam a fiscalizar a trégua e enfrentam situações arriscadas. O diplomata brasileiro Sergio de Mello usa o nosso jeitinho para negociar a paz entre os dois lados em guerra, muçulmanos e sérvios. Outra brasileira, Maria Helena Miller, trabalha para recuperar as escolas e resgatar a cultura. Sarajevo, uma cidade que tenta voltar à vida e ainda espera que as outras nações façam alguma coisa para deter os agressores.
Em que ano estamos? Aqui, alto sobre as montanhas da